Magdalene is a book where many of the poems are in the voice of a Mary Magdalene figure. She is at once the historic figure and, of course, a contemporary woman. And she's trying to find a balance within herself, a body and spirit, secular, sacred. Women, of course, in the patriarchal world have been split into either the Virgin Mary or Magdalene the prostitute. And unfortunately, we still suffer from that split. So this Magdalene is a woman who is not at all who the church fathers imagined, but she is a woman who lives a kind of cross time and is alive now. But the book begins with a quote from the Gospel according to Thomas, one of the Gnostic Gospels. And here's the quote. His disciples said, "When will you be visible to us? And when will we see you?" And Jesus said, "When you undress and are not ashamed." Before the beginning, was I ever virgin? Did someone touch me before I could speak? Who had me before I knew I was an I? So that I wanted that touch again and again without knowing who or why or from whence it came. On men, their bodies. One penis was very large and thick, so when he put it inside me, I really did say, wow. One penis was uncircumcised, and I loved to grip the shaft and pull down so the head popped out like a little man. One penis was curved, so I had to move in a different way. One penis was so friendly, I was never afraid of it. One penis was so slender, I was startled. One penis was blunt and short like a little pig. One penis couldn't harden until he stuffed it soft inside me. One penis came as soon as I started to move. "I'm sorry," he said. "I have a problem." But I didn't care. I loved that boy. One penis pressed against me hard almost every morning, but I got out of bed as if I hadn't heard a word it had said. One penis was so dear to me, I kissed it and kissed it, even after I knew it had been with someone else. One penis I never saw, but my hand came to know it from the inside of his jeans. One penis loved the inside of my mouth so much it sang, it sputtered. One had a name. One was a mouse. One, he explained to me, had very, very tiny crabs, so we couldn't have sex for a while. One was Orthodox and wouldn't touch blood. One had a mole, a hard little dot just under the rim. One penis was extremely patient without making a big deal about it. One penis had a great sense of humor. One penis had herpes, but I didn't know that word yet. One was a battering ram. One was a drunk, staggering, a lout, a bully. One slept inside me, comfortably at home. The affliction. When I walked across the room, I saw myself walking, as if I were someone else. When I picked up a fork, when I pulled off a dress, as if I were in a movie. It's what I thought you saw when you looked at me. So when I looked at you, I didn't see you. I saw the me I thought you saw, as if I were someone else. I called that outside, watching. Well, I didn't call it anything when it happened all the time. But one morning, after I'd stopped the pills, standing in the kitchen for 1 second, I was inside looking out. Then I popped back outside and saw myself looking. Would it happen again? It did. A few days later, my friend Wendy was pulling on her winter coat, standing by the kitchen door, and suddenly I was inside and I saw her. I looked out from my own eyes and I saw her eyes, blue, gray, transparent. And inside them, Wendy herself. Then I was outside again. And Wendy was saying, bye, bye, see you soon, as if nothing had happened. She hadn't noticed. She hadn't known that I had been there for maybe 40 seconds and that then I was gone. She hadn't noticed that I hadn't been there for months, years, the entire time she had known me. I needn't have been embarrassed to have been there for those seconds. She had not noticed the difference. This happened on and off for weeks. And then I was looking at my old friend John. Suddenly I was in, and I saw him. And this was almost unbearable. He saw me see him, and I saw him see me. He said something like, "You're going to be okay now," or "It's been difficult, hasn't it?" But what he said mattered only a little. We met in our mutual gaze in between a third place I had not yet been. Here's a short poem called Magdalene the Addict. I liked hell. I liked to go there alone, relieved to lie in the wreckage, ruined, physically undone. The worst had happened. What else could hurt me then? I thought it was the worst, thought nothing worse could come. Then nothing did, and no one. The landing. I stood beside the high cupboard that covered the radiator and the hall. Inside the drawers, the odd pencils and pens we couldn't find when we needed them. Near the front stairs that rose up and turned by the high windows. What did we call that space? The landing. All the pills had brought me to that place. And I understood that if I kept it all up, no one would know me. A dim light far in the distance? No. To love, I had to be there. I had to be there to be loved. So there's a teacher figure in this book. I guess it's a kind of Christ figure, but it could be really any teacher, and we have so many different kinds of teachers in our lives. And she is one of the teacher's students or followers or whatever. So here's a poem called The Teacher. There's a number of them throughout the book. And it refers to a wonderful story in the Old Testament or in the Torah when Moses, having come up and down the mountain to speak to Yahweh, is confronted by the people who say, "We want to hear him, we want to hear him, why just you?" Sorry. The Teacher. When Moses pleaded and Yahweh agreed at last to let the people hear his voice, it said that he allowed each person to hear what each could bear, to the very brim of that, and no more. Afterwards, the people said, "Please, Moses, from now on you listen. We don't want to hear it. You do the talking and listening now. Being with the teacher was a little like that, as though he were a book too difficult to read. So I thought I had to become more than I was, more than I'd been. But that wasn't it. It seemed rather that something had to go, something had to be let go of. It wasn't that I saw something new or saw suddenly into him, not that, not ever, but that the room itself, whatever room we might be standing in, attained an astonishing clarity. And the things in the room, a table, a cup, a meowing cat. We know very little about this Magdalene, who was among the disciples who knew Jesus. There is a reference to her in Luke where she's referred to as Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 devils had been cast out. And so here is a poem called Magdalene and the 7 devils, where she's trying to speak about what those devils were. The first was that I was very busy. The second, I was different from you. Whatever happened to you could not happen to me, not like that. The third, I worried. The fourth, envy, disguised as compassion. The fifth was that I refused to consider the quality of life of the aphid. The aphid disgusted me. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The mosquito too, its face, and the ant, its bifurcated body. Okay, the first was that I was so busy. The second, that I might make the wrong choice because I had decided to take that plane that day, that flight before noon, so as to arrive early. And I shouldn't have wanted that. The third, if I walked past a certain place on the street, the house would blow up. The fourth, I was made of guts and blood with a thin layer of skin lightly thrown over the whole thing. The fifth was the dead seemed more alive to me than the living. The sixth, if I touched my right arm, I had to touch my left arm. And if I touched the left arm a little harder, then I'd first touch the right, then I had to retouch the left, and then touch the right again. So it would be even. The seventh, I knew I was breathing the expelled breath of everything that was alive, and I couldn't stand it. I wanted a sieve, a mask, I hate this word, a cheesecloth, to breathe through that would stop it, whatever was inside everyone else that entered me when I breathed in. No, that was the first one. The second was that I was so busy, I had no time. How had this happened? How had our lives gotten like this? The third was that I couldn't eat food if I really saw it, distinct and separate from me, in a bowl or on a plate. Okay, the first was that I could never get to the end of the list. The second was that the laundry was never finally done. The third was that no one knew me, although they thought they did, and that if people thought of me as little as I thought of them, then what was love? The fourth was that I didn't belong to anyone. I wouldn't allow myself to belong to anyone. The fifth was that I knew none of us could ever know what we didn't know. The sixth was that I projected onto others what I myself was feeling. The seventh, it was the way my mother looked when she was dying. The sound she made, her mouth wrenched to the right and cupped open so as to take in as much air. The gurgling sound, so loud we had to speak louder to hear each other over it, and then I couldn't stop hearing it. Years later, grocery shopping, crossing the street. No, not the sound. It was her body's hunger, finally evident, what our mother had hidden all her life. For months I dreamt of knuckle bones and roots, the slabs of sidewalk pushed up like crooked teeth by what grew underneath. The underneath, that was the first devil. It was always with me. And that I didn't think, you, if I told you, would understand any of this. Maybe I'll read a few with the girl in them. This Magdalene adopts a young girl in her older age, and so the girl figures in a number of these poems later on. The girl at 3. The girl is in love with the letter M. M, she says quietly to herself, smiling at the thought of it. M, she says out loud. The book I'm reading says that what we have to do within ourselves to learn to read creates a self. But when we've created that self, we've created an edge that separates us from the world we long for. The interiority we create by reading is rich and lonely. In the paintings of the Annunciation, Mary has looked up from her book to listen to the angel. In some, her finger keeps her place, as if she would return to where she was, or to who she was, after listening. But she will not return. Where is that angel? In the room? Within the room her reading has made within her? It's a European invention, the book, the girl, the curtain bed. Mary couldn't read, and so, according to the book I'm reading, didn't have a self, not as we know it. She held these things in her heart. M, the girl says, when she sees the letter on her letterboard, although it is in fact an N. M, she shouts on the way home when we arrive there. Walking home. Everything dies, I said. How had that started? A tree? The winter? Not me, she said. And I said, oh yeah? And she said, I'm reincarnating. Ha, she said, see you in a few thousand years. Why years, I wondered. Why not months, days? She found that so funny. Ha ha, doubled over. Years, she said confidently. I think you and I have known each other a few lifetimes, I said. She said, I have never before been a soul on this earth. It was cold. We were hungry. Next time, you be the mother, I said. No way, Jose, she said, as we turned the last windy corner. The map. The failure of love might account for most of the suffering in the world. The girl was going over her global studies homework in the air, where she drew the map with her finger, touching the Gobi Desert, the plateau of Tiber in front of her, and looking through her transparent map backwards, I did suddenly see that her left is my right, and for a moment I understood. Here's a poem that has Walt Whitman in it, although it's Magdalene talking again. It's called One Day. One day, the patterned carpet, the folding chairs, the woman in the blue suit by the door examining her split ends, all of it will go on without me. I'll have disappeared. as easily as a coin under lake water, and few to notice the difference. A coin dropping into the darkening, and West 4th Street, and the sesame noodles that taste like too much peanut butter lowered into the small white paper carton. All of it will go on and on. And the I that caused me so much trouble, nowhere. Or grit thrown into the garden, or into the sticky bodies of several worms, or just gone, stopped, like the Middle Ages. Like the coin Walt Whitman carried in his pocket all the way to that basement bar on Broadway that isn't there anymore. Oh, to be in Whitman's pocket on a cold winter day, to feel his large, warm hand slide in and out and in again, to be taken hold of by Walt Whitman, to be exchanged, to be spent for something somebody wanted and drank and found delicious.
Doing great.
It's very odd to read without relating to a group,
silent audience, but
to a group of people.
You must know we're really appreciating it.
Oh, thanks. I love being with you too. It's just funny. And I haven't read in a while, in a couple of, like maybe a month or two, so I'm so, as you say, under the sway and spell of this place and all that I'm actually sort of hearing the poems, in a way I don't, I mean I do, but in a way that...
We're very, very quiet, obviously, but we would like to respond.
Oh, you doll.